Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about my top 14 favorite books. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I'm filming this a little bit early, partially because I need to pre-film the videos for the end of the year, but then also because the last week of the year, I'm going to be focusing on starting Shogun, which is a monster, and it's going to carry over into next year. It's not going to make it in this year. And I'm going to be focusing on finally finishing my reread, or really, it's barely begun, doing my reread of Peter Pan, and that's what the last week of the year is going to be, so that's Peter Pan as a reread. So here's the list. I'm not doing this list in order of my top best of the year down to, I'm not ranking them. This is just in order of how I read them. So these are my top 15 based off of the time in which they were read in the year. Sorry if the angle suddenly changed. I just kicked the tripod. Okay, books. My first favorite book of the year happens to be the first book that I read this year. Oof, I strategically planned my reading so that I'm gonna start the year off with a book that I think could be a favorite, and I'm so pleased when that works out. The first book is My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa is a hard-hitting contemporary / literary fiction book, and it is about this woman. We deal with then and now. She goes off to a boarding school when she's 15 and enters into this, by her perspective, love affair with one of her teachers. And we see her now where she's dealing with the effects of this relationship that she was in. And it's so good. I love the way the author handled this because she walked that line perfectly between making the perspective of the 15-year-old honest so that it looked romantic to her, while also keeping her self-aware enough to see that this guy that she's in a relationship with, he is not being consistent. Like, he's saying you have control, but then he's not giving her control and stuff like that. And then we have the after effects and how much that's really affected her as an adult. And it was such an honest and good. It was such a hard book to read. It was very hard to read, especially the scenes about their sexual encounters were really hard to read. So go in knowing that and decide if you want to read this book knowing that. But man, it was such an incredible book and I love it so much. The next book that I read this year that's a new favorite for me is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This is, I actually don't know what genre you would call it. A psychological, I guess it's nonfiction, I don't know what you would call it. This is written as a children's book, but it's for all ages. This was actually sent to me by a subscriber for Drennan, and I read it to him, and he was 3, and he was freshly 3, he had just turned 3, and he sat through the whole thing and was super fine with reading this story, and I cried through the whole thing. It has, I'll show you. Well, I'll show you in an image. It has this really simple art style and not a lot of words per page, so it's a really quick read, but it says, the things that it says, it takes these complex, difficult emotions and difficult things to process, and it breaks it down in such simple ways that helps you kind of process those emotions or process these things in a little bit better way. It's a book that I wish I had grown up reading. It's a book that my kids will grow up reading, and it's a book that I will be reading many, many times in my lifetime. It's a book that I think is great for kids learning to process things, and I think it's great for adults learning these same things. I just really recommend it. I loved this book so much. Next book is, I'm breaking the order now because I'm going to pair these books together, Rage of Dragons and Fires of Vengeance. This is a fantasy series. The first book came out, I don't remember, not this year, but the second book came out this year, and I read both of them this year. And I love these books so much. It's a military fantasy. It's a revenge story. So if you don't like military fantasy, like if you don't like battle training, there's a lot of battle training in this. But it's about Tao, and something happens. He lives in a society where he is in a lower societal standing. And then something happens that causes him to choose to join the military and rise in the ranks to get his revenge, which, you know, sounds like a story you've read probably before, but it was such a unique take on it and such an honest depiction of this consuming hatred and how it tears Tao down and drives Tao forward and makes him so tunnel visioned. And book 2 did a great job of continuing that theme while then bringing a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of growth. And it was a great setup for book 3. I really, really, really am enjoying these books so much. I think Evan Winter is creating something very unique and really, really good. She Came to Slay. This is a nonfiction about Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman has always been my favorite one of my favorite historical figures in school. Anytime we got to choose who we're gonna write a report on, I always chose Harriet Tubman. I just think that she is such an inspiring, fantastic person. And this was a really great story because it gave me a lot of context of like her family life and stuff outside of the Underground Railroad, stuff outside of what we usually know about her. And it also is very visual. It has like maps, and it does cover the Underground Railroad as well, so you can see the route that they took. And I just really enjoyed it. I loved learning even more about this person that I already admire so much, and it made me admire her so much more. Like, the strength of this woman is absolutely astounding. It's a really quick read. I definitely recommend it. The Last Argument of Kings, I read the final book in the First Law Trilogy this year, and I love this trilogy. You guys know this. I have a video why you should read the First Law Trilogy. Check it out if you want to. Joe Abercrombie is quickly and easily, he's become one of my favorite authors. I think that he has this ability to write these complex, unique characters that drive the story forward with it always makes sense, the decisions they make. I never agree with the decisions that they make, but it always makes sense for their character. And he just has this character work ability that's incredible, as well as I love his dark, gritty world without like, grimdark is a genre that I have very specific tastes on. Like, I like when series go dark, but I also have a line. I don't need to revel in the darkness to the extent that some grimdark authors go. And Joe, he's like, he hits that sweet spot for me. I love how brutal and dark his worlds are, and I love how honest his characters are. And I think he just does an amazing job at it. Don't worry, I'll talk more about Joe's skill later on in this list. The Yellow Wallpaper is not a book. It's a short story maybe, or I don't even know if it would be called that actually. It's 16 pages long. I love it so much. It's about this woman who is stuck in a room with yellow wallpaper. She's undergone a traumatic event, and she has been ordered by the doctor to have self-isolation. And so she only has, it's herself and her caretaker, her husband, and her husband just comes to check on her and feed her. The end. She's not allowed to have books. She's not allowed to draw. She's not allowed to create anything. Nothing. She can do nothing but stare at this yellow wallpaper. And it's her unraveling because of that. And I love this book because the first time I read it with zero context, and it was a great gothic horror. I really enjoyed it. Then I learned the context. I did some research on the story, and this is written by a woman who underwent a traumatic event, and then she was told, like, this was the treatment that her doctor gave her, to sit in a room, not be allowed to create, not be allowed to interact, nothing. And it was worse than, it made everything worse. And she wrote this as a reflection of what she went through. And this short story was actually really influential, and certain doctors they stopped giving treatments like this because of what happened to her and because of the story that she wrote from it, which I just think is so cool. Anyway, it's 16 pages, so I'm more talking about like the history of the story than I am about the story itself, because you should just read it, but I loved it. Next on the list is Jurassic Park. This was my first Michael Crichton book that I read this year, and I read 2 of his books, but I'm going to continue reading him more in 2021. I love his writing. You know the story of Jurassic Park, right? I really enjoyed this book. I grew up watching the movies, especially the first movie I watched over and over again. And the book I loved so much because Michael Crichton is a very, very environmental writer. And so I loved that he took so much time establishing a setting and establishing the science. And then things started happening. And that made these things that were happening, it made them so much more dramatic to me because I now have established the setting and I have established interest in the characters and the stakes. And I loved that. I loved it so much. And plus, too, I just really liked the way he wrote the action and, you know, certain things that were more theatrical to watch in movies. In the book, like in the movie, it's more theatrical to watch, but it doesn't really actually make that much sense. Like, just, I won't go into it. But then in the books, it all made sense. And so I really liked that he did a great balance of really intense action, but it always worked. It always made sense. It was a really great book. You should read it. I went on a huge Jane Austen binge this year. I read a lot of her books. I've read almost all of them now. I've read all of her main novels now. This is my Jane Austen set right here. You saw it in the picture. And I enjoyed it so much. I don't know which Jane Austen book to put on this list. I think I'm going to put Northanger Abbey because I've been on such a gothic thriller, gothic horror kick lately. So I think I'm going to put that one on there because it's kind of, this one is a satire and it's a play on gothic novels, but like a joke. And I love it. Oh my golly, I love so much. I love all of her books and I will change which book is my favorite regularly. Today, I'm saying that my favorite one that I read in 2020 was Northanger Abbey. Tomorrow, I may say something different. I loved the narrative style of this book because it's one where the person narrating is talking to the reader, but then also the narrator is sometimes bored with the story she's telling, so she just goes off on a side tangent, and it's all kind of making a joke about how, like, in these gothic stories, the woman goes away to a manor and then the manor has some creepy things happening and then this main character is, like, trying to find the creepy things and it's like, girl, it's a house. Like, I don't know, Jane Austen is so funny. She's so funny. And her comedies, like Emma, are so on point. And her satires, like Northanger Abbey, are so good. I don't know, man. I love Jane Austen. This year I also read through a lot of The Wheel of Time and I finished it. So that was a really fun experience. I think the book I'm going to put on this list is going to be 11, 13, 14. Which book am I going to put on this list? I don't know, actually. I should have thought more about this. I thought I'd go with my gut, but I actually don't know. Do I love 11 more than 13? Or 12. I really loved 12. I think I'm going with 11. Am I? I finished The Wheel of Time this year. Wheel of Time is on my list. I actually don't know which book I don't know which book I want to be the top. Check out my Wheel of Time reviews if you want to. But I loved the way the series ended. I thought that the final books were all so solid, especially 11 and 13, I think. And I was really, really, really happy with how things came together and how the series wrapped up. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this series as a whole. I love so much about the Wheel of Time series, but there's also some very distinct things that I don't love about the Wheel of Time series. So it has some mixed feelings from me, but my overall feelings about it are really, really positive, and those final books I enjoyed so much. The Sleeper and the Spindle, which is another short story. This one's by Neil Gaiman. This is about, it's about Snow White, sort of, and Aurora, Sleeping Beauty, is in a neighboring kingdom. Snow White hears that this neighboring kingdom is under a sleeping spell, and she decides to take a few of her dwarves, and she is going to go save the kingdom herself. And I really, really enjoyed this book. Oh my goodness, I enjoyed it so much. I loved how he took these classic stories that we already have some established understanding about, and he changed them so much in little ways to make them wholly and uniquely his. And I just thought it was such an empowering story. I loved her taking her story into her own hands and doing her own thing and choosing, you know what, it's very short. I don't want to say too much about it. I will say that a lot of people have picked this up because of me, and it's gotten very mixed feedback. Like, some people love it too. Some people really didn't appreciate it, but it's really short. So if you want to try it out, it will not waste your time. Or it will. You may think it's a waste of time, but it won't waste a lot of your time at least. My Cousin Rachel is a Daphne du Maurier author book. She's another one of my favorite authors. And, oh my golly, I loved My Cousin Rachel so much. There's another du Maurier book that I'm in the middle of that might also make this list. I don't know. But anyway, My Cousin Rachel, the plot, when I try to explain it, sounds so convoluted, but it makes sense when you're in it. This man, his cousin, just went off to marry his other cousin, but on the other side, so it's not too sketchy. And while he was away, he died. So this guy who we're following is making up these ideas of of who this woman must be, Rachel, and how much he's probably going to hate her. Then she comes for a visit, and then we go from there. And it's du Maurier's signature style of these two people that are both kind of sketchy, and each chapter reveals a little bit more about them. And each chapter you kind of switch sides, and it never feels cheap, and it never feels like du Maurier's hand is too strong on the story where it's like, okay, you're leading me to believe things. No, she's just making these characters really authentically layered and messed up so that you're constantly switching what you think. And she has this ability to write this very unsettling tone to her stories. So she writes these stories about people that are very not cool and have very bad ways of living their lives, and she takes these unsettling stories and creates this unsettling environment and has these unsettling prose, and I just enjoy her stories so much. And then she ends them right at the perfect point where it's like, I don't actually fully know what happened, but I have so many theories, and they're so much fun to discuss. I love du Maurier so much, and she did a great job with this story. I do like Rebecca more as a story, but I think that My Cousin Rachel is better written, so I just can't wait to read more of her books because she's a phenomenal author, and I love everything that I've read by her so far, including the one that I'm currently reading. Best Served Cold. I just put out a review for this one. I'll link it over there. It was spoiler free. Okay, we already talked about Joe and how much skill this man has in writing characters and in writing worlds and tones. And this book shows off his ability to plot. The First Law Trilogy has a really great plot, but it doesn't really begin until the second book. This book starts strong. You do not need to be patient with him at all. And then it just keeps moving. It was such a great story with so many things. I just talked about it, so I don't want to spend too much of your time talking about it again. But it's a story about revenge. And it has family dynamics. It has a group of misfits having to work together, and some of them mesh really well together and some of them don't mesh at all, and it's terrible. He does a great job of writing emotion. There's backstabbing and betrayal and love, and he's just everything that he tackled in this book. Like, I feel like this book was Joe showing off, you know? Like, I feel like The First Law is masterfully done, but this book is like, let me show you all that I can do, and he did it all so well. I still don't know how I feel about that ending, but overall I feel positive about it. I am excited to keep reading these standalones, that's for sure. And the final book in this video is In A Holidaze. I just finished this. This is a Christina Lauren romance. Christina Lauren was also in my worst books of the year because that's how it works with this author duo. But with this one, I enjoyed it so much. So I really like Groundhog Day plots. Oh, there's gonna be a review for In A Holidaze up tomorrow at the point that you see this video, so look out for that. But this plot it's a Groundhog Day plot, which it happens to be a trope that I love, even though I've never seen the Groundhog Day movie. It's fine. So this main character, she has this family vacation cabin that they spend their Christmas. It's two families that spend their Christmas together in this cabin every single year. And she's always been in love with one of the fellas, but she's too shy to talk about it. And then on their way home, they get into a car accident, and then time resets. And she's back at the cabin at the beginning of the week-long winter vacation that they take every year. And time continues to reset on her until she can get it right. And she has to figure out what it is that she's supposed to be getting right. And, you know, I really enjoy the way Christina Lauren writes romance sometimes. This time I really loved it. I really enjoyed the chemistry between these two characters. I love this trope. I love the setting of, you know, right around Christmas time. It's the perfect time to read it. I love different, like, big family dynamics. I love their traditions. I love the arc that our main character had and how she learned to be more authentically herself and not to constantly be tiptoeing around being, like, the perfect person, but instead just, like, being who she is. And one thing that I complained about in my Worst Books of the Year video is that Christina Lauren sometimes, when they decide, okay, time for a big drama at the ending, a big conflict at the end, so that, I don't know why they do it actually. When it came time for that, I was ready to hate this book suddenly, because that's happened to me before with their books, but instead, they actually dialed it back quite a bit, and it wasn't so bad, and it worked out pretty okay. So I was really happy with the ending, which it doesn't always happen with their books. I went back and forth on if I wanted this to be in my favorites video, because I definitely have I have more complaints for this book than I have for most of the books on this video. Like, certain scenes were definitely really rushed or skipped over, and there was absolutely some very cheesy dialogue and lines in this book that I was just like, I didn't need that. We could have just not done that. But I don't know, like, romance is a genre that I don't read a lot of, and when I do read it, I oftentimes don't like it. And I loved this book so much that I think it should be in my favorites list, even if it's not like one of, I don't know, even if I don't love it in the same way as some of the books on this list, I love it so hard in a different way. So it should be here, right? Well, it's here, so it doesn't matter what you think. So those are all the books in my favorites of the year list. I would love to hear if you have read any of these, if you plan to read any of them, and what your favorite books of the year were. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.